My name is Sharon, and at 28, I thought I knew my family well. When my parents announced they were celebrating their 30th anniversary with a trip to Italy, I was thrilled to join them. But my heart sank when my mom looked me directly in the eye and said, "Flights cost $1,200 each. If you can't afford it, you'll have to stay home." I nodded silently, my mind already racing to figure out how I could pay for it despite my tight finances. I had no idea that agreeing to this trip would uncover such a profound betrayal, one that would completely shatter my view of the people I loved most. Before I share what happened next, I'm curious to know where you're watching from. Please hit the like button and subscribe because this story gets truly wild. You'll be shocked at the length some people will go to get what they want and how a single text message appended everything I thought I knew about my own mother. A tale of two siblings. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I always felt overshadowed by my older brother, Marcus. From the outside, our parents, Linda and Richard, who'd been married for 30 years, seemed to be the picture of a perfect, middle-class American family. My dad was a local accountant, while my mom was a stay-at-home parent who later took on a part-time job at a dental office. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home with a white picket fence, attended church every Sunday, and took annual camping trips to Lake Erie. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken tension I couldn't put my finger on. Marcus, who was 3 years my senior, effortlessly earned our parents' praise and attention. He was the star of his high school debate team, graduated as valedictorian, and went to law school on a full scholarship. I, on the other hand, struggled with math, barely finished college with student loans I'm still paying off, and got a marketing coordinator job at a small ad agency that barely covers my rent and groceries. The difference between us became even more obvious 2 years ago when Marcus married Jessica. Her family was wealthy, her father owned several car dealerships across Ohio, and she wore designer clothes to every family gathering. They lived in a huge suburban house with a 3-car garage, took vacations to Napa Valley, and always had the newest gadgets and luxuries. During family dinners, the conversation almost always revolved around Marcus's latest legal victories or Jessica's charity work. My attempts to join in were met with polite nods and quick changes of subject. The anniversary trip announcement came during one of these dinners in March. Mom had made her famous pot roast, and we were all seated around the old oak dining table my dad had built when I was a child. The conversation had been the usual. Marcus was describing a recent high-profile case he'd won, and Jessica was showing off her new Cartier watch when Mom suddenly stood up and tapped her wine glass with her fork. "Your father and I have an announcement to make," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We've decided to celebrate our 30th anniversary with a trip to Italy. We've always dreamed of seeing Rome, Florence, and the Amalfi Coast." Dad smiled and reached for Mom's hand. "We thought it would be wonderful if you two could come with us. It would mean the world to us to have our whole family together for such a special milestone." My heart immediately soared. A family trip to Italy sounded like a dream come true. I'd been working overtime for months, saving every penny, and I thought maybe this was my chance to make some beautiful memories with my family. But then Mom's expression changed slightly, and she continued in a tone that was a bit too casual. "Now, we'll be paying for our own expenses, of course, but we expect you kids to handle your own flights and accommodations. We found some great flights leaving on June 15th, and they're $1,200 each. If you can't afford it, stay behind." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. $1,200 was more than my entire monthly take-home pay. My face flushed with embarrassment as I realized what had seemed like a generous family invitation was actually a financial test I was bound to fail. Marcus immediately chimed in, "That sounds perfect, Mom. Jessica and I have been wanting to visit Europe anyway. We can definitely make that work." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "Oh, this will be so much fun. I'll start researching the best restaurants and shopping districts in Rome." Meanwhile, I sat there, replaying the numbers in my head. $1,200 for the flight, plus hotels, food, activities, shopping. I was easily looking at $3,000 for a week, which was more than I had in my savings account. The way Mom had phrased it so matter-of-factly, so dismissively, made it clear that she didn't care about my financial struggles. I also noticed something else. Mom was fidgeting with her napkin and wouldn't quite meet my eyes when she talked about the trip. She seemed unusually nervous for someone just sharing exciting vacation plans. She kept mentioning specific flights and dates, as if she had already made all the arrangements without consulting anyone. "I'll find a way to make it work," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I really want to be there with you both." Mom's smile seemed forced. "Well, we'll see. The deposits are due next week, so you'll need to decide quickly." As I drove home to my small one-bedroom apartment that night, I felt a familiar ache in my chest. It was the same feeling I'd had my entire life, the sense that I wasn't quite good enough for my own family, especially when Marcus got something I couldn't have. But this time, I was determined to prove them wrong. I was going to find a way to make this trip happen, no matter what it took. The unsettling discovery. The following Tuesday, I was at my desk, trying to concentrate on a client presentation, when my phone buzzed with a text. It was from my credit card company. "Alert, unusual activity. Detected on your account. Charge of $4,238 to Romano Travel Services. If this was not you, please contact us immediately." My blood ran cold. Over $4,000? I hadn't made a charge like that. My hands shaking, I immediately opened my banking app and saw the transaction, a charge for $4,238 to a company called Romano Travel Services, made just 20 minutes ago. But that wasn't all. As I scrolled through the details, my stomach dropped. The description read, 4 business class tickets to Rome, Italy. Departure June 15, 2024. 4 tickets. Business class. The exact same date my mom had mentioned. My heart pounding, I immediately called the credit card company. "I need to report fraudulent charges on my account," I said, my voice barely steady. "Someone has used my card to buy airline tickets." The representative, Amanda, walked me through the details. The tickets had been purchased online using my card number, security code, and billing address. The email confirmation, however, had been sent to an address I didn't recognize, lindazacharon2024@gmail.com. Linda, my mother's name, combined with mine. "I need to dispute these charges immediately and lock my account," I told Amanda, my mind racing. "Of course, Miss Sharon," she said. "I can see these charges are definitely suspicious. 4 business class tickets to Rome for over $4,000. We'll reverse them immediately and issue you a new card. You should receive it within 3 business days." After I hung up, I sat in my cubicle, staring at my phone, trying to process it all. Someone had stolen my credit card information to buy 4 business class tickets to Rome. 4 tickets, presumably for my parents, Marcus, and Jessica. And the email address used contained my mother's name. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, and I felt sick. My mom's nervous behavior at dinner, her insistence on specific flights and dates, her casual dismissal of my financial concerns, and now, a mysterious purchase on my credit card for the very trip she described. I thought back to my last few visits to my parents' house. I always kept my purse in the front hall closet, the same place I'd put it since I was a teenager. My wallet was always inside with all my credit cards. It would have been so easy for someone to take pictures of them while I was in the bathroom or helping Mom in the kitchen. But surely my own mother wouldn't do something like that. There had to be another explanation. Maybe it was identity theft from a data breach, or someone had skimmed my card at a restaurant. I tried to convince myself it was just a terrible coincidence, but deep down, I already knew the truth. The email address was too specific, the timing too perfect, and the number of tickets too exact. Someone in my family had stolen my credit card information to pay for their Italian vacation. And based on the email address and my mom's behavior, I was almost certain I knew who. The rest of the workday was a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a reasonable explanation, but none came. Instead, I found myself remembering other incidents over the years, times when money had gone missing from my purse at family gatherings, times I was blamed for expenses I was sure I hadn't made, times I felt gaslighted and confused about my own finances. By the time I got home that evening, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to pretend it didn't happen or make excuses for whoever did this to me. I was going to find out the truth, and I was going to make sure they faced consequences. Gathering the evidence. The first thing I did when I got home was check my security systems. I had cameras installed throughout my apartment after a break-in scare last year, as well as a continuously recording camera in my car. More importantly, my parents had a security system, too, one I had helped Dad install last Christmas. If I could access those recordings from my recent family visits, I might be able to find proof. I called Dad first, trying to sound casual. "Hi, Dad. I was wondering if I could access the security footage from your house. I think I might have left my earrings there last weekend, and I wanted to check the footage to see where I put them." Dad was happy to help, giving me the login information. "You know how to access it remotely, right? Your mom's at her book club tonight, so I'm just watching the game." Within minutes, I was logged into their system, scrolling through the past few weeks of footage. I focused on the times I had been there, particularly last Sunday's dinner. I fast-forwarded through hours of mundane footage until I found what I was looking for. There it was, as clear as day. The timestamp showed last Sunday at 6:47 p.m. I watched myself get up from the dinner table and head toward the bathroom. The camera angle showed the front hallway, where I had left my purse on the coat rack. About 2 minutes after I left the room, I saw my mother walk into the hallway. She looked around nervously, then quickly opened my purse. My heart pounded as I watched her take out my wallet and pull out my credit cards. She held them up to the light, clearly photographing both sides of each card with her phone. The entire thing took less than 30 seconds. She put everything back exactly as it had been and hurried back to the kitchen, arriving just before I returned from the bathroom. I watched the footage 3 more times, each viewing making me feel sicker. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or a moment of weakness. This was calculated, planned, and deliberate. My own mother had systematically stolen my financial information while I was a guest in her home. But I needed more evidence. I logged into my phone carrier's website and checked the call logs and text messages from Mom's phone. Nothing suspicious there, but then I realized she probably wouldn't be stupid enough to use her regular phone for something like this. I started researching Romano Travel Services, the company that had charged my card. After some digging, I found their website. They specialized in luxury European vacations, and sure enough, they had a package deal for Italy that included business-class flights departing on June 15th. The package was for 4 people and cost exactly $4,238. Then I decided to do something I'd never done before. I created a fake email account and sent a message to lindazacharon2024@gmail.com, the address used for the ticket confirmation. "Hi, I'm from Romano Travel Services following up on your recent booking. We need to confirm some details about your June 15th departure to Rome. Please call us at your earliest convenience." I included a Google Voice number I had just set up so I could see if anyone responded. Within 2 hours, my Google Voice number rang. "Hello, this is Linda calling about the Rome trip booking. I got your email." It was my mother's voice. My own mother, calling about the fraudulent charges on my credit card. I didn't answer the call, but I saved the voicemail. Now I had video evidence of her stealing my card information and audio evidence of her responding to emails about the fraudulent charges. The case was building, but I still needed to know who else was involved. There was no way Mom had planned this whole scheme by herself. The accomplices. The next day, I decided to do more investigating. I called Jessica, pretending to be excited about the trip and wanting to coordinate our packing. "Oh, the Italy trip," Jessica said, sounding genuinely excited. "Marcus told me your mom handled all the flight arrangements. Wasn't that sweet of her? She said she wanted to make sure we all got seats together, so she booked everything through some travel service that specializes in family vacations. She even upgraded us all to business class as a surprise. She said it was her anniversary gift to the whole family. Marcus was so touched that she'd spend that much money on all of us." My hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. So Marcus and Jessica knew Mom had booked their flights. They knew she had upgraded everyone to business class and just accepted that she was paying thousands of dollars for their vacation without asking where the money came from. Either they were completely naive, or they were in on the scheme. I decided to test Marcus directly. I sent him a text, "Hey, I'm having some credit card issues. Someone made some fraudulent charges for airline tickets. You haven't had any problems like that recently, have you?" His response came back within minutes, "No, no problems here." "That sucks, though. You should definitely report it to your card company. Identity theft is so common these days." He was lying to me. He knew exactly what those charges were, and he was pretending to be sympathetic while letting me believe I was a victim of random identity theft. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just my mother who had stolen from me, my brother and sister-in-law were accomplices, willing to benefit from money they knew had been taken from me without my permission. I spent the entire evening crying, not just because of the money, but because of what this meant about my family. These weren't strangers who had victimized me, these were the people who were supposed to love and protect me, and they had chosen to exploit me instead. But by the next morning, my sadness had turned into something else: determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I was going to expose what they had done and make sure they faced the consequences. Seeking counsel. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my approach. I couldn't just confront them with accusations. I needed to be strategic and methodical, and I had to be prepared for them to try to gaslight me or turn the situation around. First, I made copies of all my evidence. I downloaded the security footage to multiple devices and cloud storage accounts. I saved the voicemail from my mom. I printed out all the credit card statements and documentation for my fraud dispute. I took screenshots of the Romano Travel Services website and their Italy package details. Then, I called my uncle Robert, my dad's younger brother. Robert had always been the black sheep of the family, partly because he'd never been impressed by Marcus and had sometimes commented on our family's dynamics. If anyone would believe and support me, it would be him. "Sharon," Robert said when I called. "What a nice surprise. How are you doing, kiddo?" "Uncle Robert," I said. "I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you meet me for coffee this weekend? I need some advice about a family situation." We met that Saturday at a small downtown cafe, away from anywhere we might run into other family members. I laid out the entire situation for him, showing him all the evidence I had gathered. Robert listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as I explained what had happened. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," he finally said when I finished. "But I've always suspected your mother was capable of something like this. And Marcus, that boy, has always had a sense of entitlement that bothered me." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Sharon, there have been rumors in the family for years. Questions about money that went missing from your grandmother's purse during visits. Suspicions about some jewelry that disappeared after family gatherings. Your mom always had explanations, and everyone wanted to believe her, but I've had my doubts." This was news to me. Why didn't anyone ever say anything? "Because she's family, and because she's clever about it," he said. "She never takes enough to cause a big fuss, and she's good at making people doubt themselves. But this is different. This is a serious crime, Sharon. This is credit card fraud, identity theft. This isn't something you can just sweep under the rug." Robert helped me research my legal options. We found a lawyer who specialized in fraud cases, and I scheduled a consultation for the following week. We also researched the process for filing a police report and what evidence I would need. "You know they're going to try to manipulate you," Robert warned me. "They're going to say it was a misunderstanding, or that they were planning to pay you back, or that they thought you'd be okay with it. Don't let them gaslight you." Confessing to Dad. I also decided I needed to tell my dad what was happening before I confronted everyone else. Dad had always been the gentler parent, and I suspected he might not know about Mom's scheme. If there was any chance of salvaging some family relationships, it would probably be with him. I called Dad and asked if I could come over on Sunday afternoon when Mom would be at her sister's house. I told him I needed to discuss something important about the Italy trip. When I arrived at my childhood home, Dad was in his garage workshop, refinishing an old rocking chair. The familiar smell of wood stain and the sound of classic rock on his radio made me feel nostalgic for simpler times. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Dad asked, setting down his sandpaper and giving me his full attention. I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage of Mom taking pictures of my credit cards. I watched his face change as he realized what he was seeing. Marcus tried to take control of the conversation. "Look, this is clearly a misunderstanding that got out of hand. Mom made a mistake, but we can fix this. We'll pay you back for the tickets, and we can all move on." "You'll pay me back with what money?" I repeated. "Jessica just told me last week that you thought Mom was paying for the business class upgrades as her anniversary gift to the family. So, either you're lying now or you were lying then." Jessica squirmed in her seat. I might have misunderstood what Marcus told me." "No," I said firmly. "You understood perfectly. You all knew that Mom was paying for flights she couldn't afford, and none of you cared enough to ask where the money was coming from. You were happy to let someone else foot the bill for your vacation, even if it meant that someone couldn't afford to come." The truth was finally sinking in for all of them. They hadn't just been passive beneficiaries of Mom's theft, they had been willing participants, eager to accept expensive flights as long as they didn't have to examine too closely how those flights were being paid for. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to cancel these tickets immediately and ensure that every penny is refunded to my credit card account. You're going to sign a written acknowledgement of what happened and a promise that nothing like this will ever happen again. And you're all going to get financial counseling because this behavior is not normal or acceptable." "And if we don't?" Marcus asked, his voice full of challenge. "Then I file a police report tomorrow morning, and you can all explain to the authorities why you thought it was okay to commit credit card fraud. Marcus, you can explain to the State Bar Association why you were involved in a criminal conspiracy. And Mom, you can explain to a judge why you thought stealing from your own daughter was an acceptable way to fund your vacation." The room fell silent again. The weight of real consequences was finally hitting them. The aftermath. The next few hours were some of the most intense of my life. Mom continued to cry and beg for forgiveness, insisting she had never meant to hurt me and had just made a terrible mistake. Marcus went into full lawyer mode, trying to negotiate and minimize the situation, arguing about definitions and technicalities. Jessica mostly stayed quiet, clearly realizing that her involvement made her vulnerable to legal consequences, too. But I had learned something important about myself that evening. I had found my voice, and I wasn't going to let them intimidate or manipulate me anymore. "The crying needs to stop, Mom," I said firmly. "You're not the victim here. You planned this, you executed it, and you were perfectly happy to let me pay for everyone's vacation while excluding me from the trip I was actually paying for. But honey," Mom pleaded, "you know we love you. We just got desperate. The business has been so slow, and we haven't had a real vacation in years. If you loved me, you wouldn't have stolen from me," I replied. "If you respected me at all, you would have asked for help instead of just taking what you wanted. And if you were really desperate, you would have planned a vacation you could actually afford." Marcus tried a different approach. "Look, Sharon, I get that you're angry, but think about what you're really talking about here. You want to destroy our family over a misunderstanding about money. You want to send our mother to jail. I want accountability," I said. "I want you all to understand that what you did was serious and wrong and that there have to be consequences. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Marcus. This was a planned crime that you were all happy to benefit from." "We didn't know," Jessica finally spoke up. "Yes, you did," I said. "Maybe you didn't know the specific details, but you knew that Mom was paying for expensive flights for everyone, and you never questioned whether she could afford it or where the money was coming from. You were willfully ignorant because it benefited you." Dad had been mostly quiet, but now he stood up. "This needs to stop. Linda, what you did was theft. There's no other way to look at it. You stole from our daughter, and you involved Marcus and Jessica in covering it up." "I didn't cover anything up," Marcus protested. "You lied to Sharon when she asked you about credit card fraud," Dad said. "You pretended to be sympathetic while you knew exactly what those charges were. That's covering it up." Over the next several hours, we worked out the details of how they were going to make this right. The tickets would be cancelled immediately with full refunds processed back to my credit card account. Mom would sign a written confession acknowledging what she had done. Marcus and Jessica would write statements acknowledging their knowledge and participation. Most importantly, they would all agree to stay out of my financial life completely. No more access to my personal information. No more assumptions about what I could or should pay for. No more treating me like a backup funding source for their lifestyle choices. What about the Italy trip? Mom asked quietly. What about it? I said. You can plan whatever vacation you can actually afford, but I won't be going with you, and I won't be paying for any part of it. But it's our anniversary, Dad said sadly. Then celebrate it in a way that doesn't require committing crimes.